The rain poured hard as Ayanda stood outside the tall gates, soaked and shivering, clutching the small bag that held everything she owned. She had come here with hope, believing the reunion was for everyone, believing her father's family would open their arms after so many years. Aunt Ngozi had told her, "Come home, your father would have wanted it." That gave her courage. But from the moment she arrived, it was clear she didn't belong. The gatekeeper ignored her until she called out her name 3 times, loud and desperate. When he finally opened the gate, his eyes scanned her from head to toe, judging her silently. Ayanda walked in slowly, her wet shoes squeaking against the pavement. Laughter filled the air. The family sat together on the veranda, eating, drinking zobo, wrapped in expensive clothes, and smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. No one rushed to greet her. No one stood up. She felt like a stranger in her father's house. Then Chief Chibwezi rose. He was her uncle, the so-called head of the family now. His voice was loud, pretending to be welcoming. "Ah, our long-lost girl, Ayanda, you came after all." She gave a small, nervous smile, her heart thudding in her chest. "Yes, sir, I'm happy to be here." But the next words shattered that fragile hope. "We're a bit full inside, so we've arranged a nice little place for you, in the garage." There was a strange silence, then awkward chuckles. Ayanda's eyes darted around. Was this a joke? But a housegirl quickly stepped forward, picked up her bag, and motioned for her to follow. No one stopped her. No one objected. She was led around the house, past the flower beds, down a narrow side path, and into a small, dusty garage. The air was stale. A thin foam mattress lay on the floor. A single dim bulb flickered above. The smell of old oil and metal still lingered. She stood there frozen, trying not to cry. This was her welcome. Her family sat inside under fans and chandeliers, and she was left with cracked walls and concrete. She didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. She simply sat on the mattress, dripping wet, heart aching, eyes wide open in the dark. They had made their message clear. She wasn't one of them. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. Ayanda's story didn't start in that garage. It started years ago, when her father, Obinna, broke a family rule. He fell in love with Essie, a Ghanaian woman, and married her. The Obis didn't approve. They called her an outsider. They said Obinna had betrayed his blood, so they cut him off. No visits, no calls, no help, just silence. When Ayanda was only 9, Obinna died in a car accident. Essie was left alone to raise their daughter. She moved back to Ghana, selling clothes in the market to survive. Later, she brought Ayanda to Lagos and worked as a cleaner in a hotel. Their life was small, no luxuries, no family gatherings, just mother and daughter holding on to each other. But Ayanda was different. She studied hard, won scholarships. Her teachers said she was one of the brightest. Still, she never forgot the silence from her father's side. No birthday cards, no uncles checking in. They had erased her. 3 months ago, cancer took Essie too. It happened fast. One hospital visit turned into many. Then the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. On her final night, Essie held Ayanda's hand and whispered through the pain, "Go to them, reconnect. You're not alone." She gave her a folder and made her promise. That folder was all Ayanda had now. Inside it were papers her mother had protected for years. She hadn't opened them yet. She wasn't ready, not until now. She thought maybe her aunt had meant what she said, that they would welcome her, that the past was behind them. But the garage said otherwise. The looks, the whispers, the way the adults ignored her presence, it all screamed rejection. That night, lying on the thin mattress, Ayanda didn't sleep. The bulb above flickered, buzzing with heat. Mosquitoes circled her arms. Her cousins slept under thick duvets in air-conditioned rooms while she stared at the ceiling, wondering if her mother had been wrong. But she didn't cry. Not yet. There was something off in this house. The way people looked at her, the way they spoke in half sentences when she entered a room. It wasn't just dislike, it was fear, and Ayanda could feel it deep in her chest. She turned toward her bag, pulled it close, and reached for the folder. If they were hiding something, she needed to know what it was. Now, Ayanda waited until the house was quiet. The sun was barely up, and most of the family was still asleep. She sat cross-legged on the garage floor and pulled the folder close. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were neatly stacked papers, some yellowed with age, some fresh. She recognized government stamps, lawyers' seals, and something handwritten. Her eyes scanned each paper carefully. First, land documents with her father's name. Then property papers showing ownership of a house in Ikorodu. one that was built long before the family mansion. She paused. Why had no one ever mentioned this? At the bottom of the folder was a thick envelope. Inside, a letter written in her father's handwriting. The ink was faded, but still clear. She took a breath and read, "To my daughter, Ayanda Obina Esi, I leave all the land purchased in Ikorodu and the original Obi family house. These are hers by right. No one shall take them from her." She stopped breathing for a moment. Her hands froze. A will, dated 17 years ago, signed by her father, stamped by a lawyer, witnessed, complete, legal. Ayanda read it again and again. This wasn't just an old note. This was real. Her father had made sure she wouldn't be forgotten. He had written her name clearly. He wanted her to have something, something of her own. And the family, they had kept it from her, lied by silence, treated her like a beggar, left her in the garage when part of the land they enjoyed was actually hers. She felt her throat tighten, but she stayed calm. She picked up her phone and took clear pictures of every page, front and back. Then she backed them up to the cloud, just in case. She couldn't trust anyone in that house. If they had hidden this for so long, they might try to take it again. She stared at the door of the garage, heart pounding. This wasn't about being unwanted anymore. This was about something much bigger. Her father had left her more than a memory. He left her a claim, and maybe that's why they didn't want her around. Now it made sense. The way Uncle Chibueze looked at her, the fake smile, the garage, the cold silence. They weren't just being mean, they were hiding something, and now she knew. Late that night, while the rest of the house slept, the door to the garage creaked open quietly. Ayanda sat up, her eyes still wide from all that had happened. A soft voice whispered her name. It was Zara, Aunt Ngozi's youngest daughter, 17, smart, and always watching from the shadows. She stepped inside, holding a flashlight and a warm shawl. She wrapped it around Ayanda's shoulders without saying much at first. "I saw how they treated you," Zara said softly. "It's not right." Ayanda looked at her, confused but grateful. No one else had shown even a bit of care. Zara hesitated, then knelt beside her. "You should leave. They don't want you here, especially Uncle Chibueze. He was angry when Aunt Ngozi invited you." "Why?" Ayanda asked, her voice low. Zara looked around before answering, like someone might be listening. "Because he's scared. Scared of me." Zara nodded slowly. "There's an old rumor in this family that your father, Uncle Obina, left something behind. Land, property. But when he died and your mum left, everyone thought that was the end. They thought you'd never come back, never know." Ayanda's heart started racing. "They think I'm poor and clueless." "Yes," Zara said. "They think you don't know your rights, that you're just here because you have nowhere else to go. But if you have proof, if those papers your mother gave you show you have a claim, they'd do anything to keep it hidden." Ayanda finished the sentence. Zara nodded again. "Just be careful. Uncle Chibueze can't afford to lose power. That land your dad owned, they say it's worth millions now. That's why they're pretending to be kind in front of others, but treating you like dirt in private." Ayanda sat still, her mind racing. Now it made sense. The cold welcome, the garage, the silence, the strange stares. It wasn't just about her father's mistake. It was about money, power, property. Zara squeezed her hand. "You're not crazy. Trust what you know, and hide those documents well." Ayanda nodded slowly. This wasn't just rejection. It was a quiet war, and now she knew what she was fighting for. Early the next morning, Ayanda was woken by loud voices. The sound of people arguing filled the compound. Then came a sharp scream. "Who stole Mama Adaku's gold chain?" It was one of the aunties, shouting at the top of her lungs. Doors flew open. People rushed out. In seconds, the whole family gathered in the courtyard, looking around with suspicion. Then, someone pointed at the garage. Ayanda stepped out slowly, half asleep, confused by the commotion. Before she could even ask what was going on, one of the uncles shouted, "Search her bag." "What?" Ayanda said, startled. "I didn't take anything." But no one listened. They stormed into the garage and grabbed her small bag. They dumped it right there in front of everyone. Her clothes, toothbrush, a comb, scattered on the wet ground. But one thing was missing. The folder, the documents her mother gave her. Gone. Her phone too. Ayanda's heart dropped. She knelt down and searched frantically. Nothing. Zara stood at the side, pale and silent, clearly shaken but afraid to speak. Then Chief Chibueze stepped forward, arms folded, face full of fake concern. "Thief and liar," he said coldly. "You come here uninvited, and now family valuables start disappearing. Ayanda looked up at him, stunned. I didn't take anything, but his voice rose, loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't play innocent. You're not even part of this family anymore. You just showed up to cause trouble. Whispers filled the air. Some cousins looked away. Others stared with disgust. No one stepped forward to help. Even Aunt Ngozi, the one who invited her, said nothing. Ayanda stood there, speechless. Not because she had something to hide, but because she could feel it. They planned this. Someone stole the folder. Someone took her phone. They were trying to erase her completely. Before she could even gather herself, two of the men dragged her out of the garage. They pushed her to sit outside in the compound, right where the rain was starting to fall again. She sat there, soaked, cold, heartbroken. Zara watched from a distance, her hands shaking. Ayanda didn't cry. Not this time. She just stared into the distance, her mind racing. They were trying to break her, but she wouldn't let them win. That night, Ayanda sat quietly near the corner of the garage, her clothes still damp, her heart heavier than ever. She felt like a stranger in her own family's home. The pain of being accused, humiliated, and left in the rain was too much. She wiped silent tears from her face, trying not to make a sound. Then, she heard soft footsteps approaching. An older woman stepped out from the shadows near the kitchen. She wore a faded wrapper and moved slowly, like someone who'd seen too much and carried it all in her bones. Ayanda had seen her earlier, sweeping silently in the background. She didn't know her name, but the woman looked kind. She sat down next to Ayanda, gently. My name is Mama Nkem, she said in a low voice. I used to work here many years ago, before they built this new mansion. Ayanda didn't respond at first, unsure whether to trust her, but then the woman placed a warm hand over hers and whispered, Your father, Obinna, was a good man. He loved your mother. He loved you, but he trusted the wrong people, especially his brother, Chibueze. Ayanda's eyes widened. He betrayed my father. Mama Nkem nodded slowly. That land in Ikorodu, your father bought it with his own money. It's worth millions now, and your uncles, they know it. That's why they treat you this way. That's why they don't want you here. Ayanda's voice cracked. But the documents, they're gone. Someone took them. Mama Nkem looked at her carefully, then gave a slight smile. Your mother gave you copies. I know where the original is. It's still in this house. Your father showed me himself before he passed. He said, if anything ever happens to me, tell my daughter when she's ready. Ayanda sat still, her breath caught in her throat. This woman, this stranger, had held on to a secret for 17 years. Why now? Ayanda asked quietly. Because I see you're ready, and because they've gone too far, Mama Nkem said. Meet me in the kitchen tomorrow morning before sunrise. I'll show you. Then she stood up and disappeared into the shadows again, leaving Ayanda with one thing she hadn't felt in days, hope. The house was dark and quiet. Everyone had gone to bed. The only sound was the ticking clock in the hallway and the soft creak of Ayanda's footsteps on the floor. She moved carefully, her heart beating fast. Mama Nkem waited by the study door, holding a small flashlight. She gave Ayanda a nod, then opened the door, slowly. The study smelled like old wood and dust. A large bookshelf stood against the wall, filled with books no one had touched in years. At the far corner of the room, just as Mama Nkem had said, there was a part of the wall where one brick looked slightly different. Mama Nkem knelt down and tapped the brick. It moved. Ayanda watched in silence as Mama Nkem gently pulled it out, revealing a small hidden space behind it. Inside was a plastic-wrapped envelope, thick and yellow with age. Mama Nkem handed it to her with both hands. Ayanda opened it carefully. Inside were the original documents, more than she had ever imagined. There was her father's will, clearly signed and stamped, listing Ayanda as the full heir of his properties. There was also the original land deed, confirming that the large piece of land in Ikorodu was legally purchased by her father Obinna and left in Ayanda's name. Her fingers shook as she turned each page. There was no doubt now. It was all real. She had been the rightful owner all along. Ayanda pulled out her phone and began snapping photos. Every page, every signature. This time, she didn't save them to just her phone. She uploaded them to cloud storage, emailed them to herself, and backed them up. No one would take these from her again. Mama Nkem placed the brick back and wiped the space clean with a cloth. Keep the original hidden. But now you have proof. They can't erase you anymore. Ayanda looked at her with grateful eyes. Thank you. Mama Nkem smiled. Your father would be proud. They left the study quietly, hearts pounding but eyes wide open. Ayanda didn't sleep that night. Everything was about to change. The sun had barely risen when Ayanda left the house. Her clothes were still damp from the night before, her shoes muddy, but she didn't care. She walked fast, her bag clutched tight to her chest, holding the original will and land deed. The town was just waking up. Market women were setting up stalls. Children were walking to school. But Ayanda had only one destination, the police station. Inside, she asked to speak to the officer in charge. They led her to Inspector Tunda, a calm man with kind eyes. She placed the documents on his desk and explained everything. Her father's will, the stolen folder, the accusations, the threats. Inspector Tunde flipped through the papers slowly, nodding. "This is serious," he said, "and your name is clearly on all these documents. These properties were never legally transferred. They belong to you." He picked up his radio. "We're opening a case. We move now." 2 hours later, 2 police trucks rolled into the family compound. Uniformed officers jumped down. The loud sound of car doors slamming made heads turn. Family members came out of the house, confused and panicked. Chief Chibwezi appeared at the door in a wrapper, his face pale. "What is this?" Inspector Tunda held up a paper. "We have a legal warrant. We're here to investigate theft, harassment, and unlawful possession of property belonging to Ayanda Obina Essi." Everyone turned to look at Ayanda, who stood quietly behind the officers. Her face calm, her eyes steady. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Chaos broke out. Aunties shouted, uncles argued, cousins asked questions. But the officers didn't stop. They went straight into the study. Another officer took statements from Ayanda. Zara came running to her side and held her hand tight. For the first time since Ayanda stepped into that house, she felt safe, she felt seen, and she knew this was only the beginning. The living room was tense. Every seat was filled. Some stood with arms crossed, others paced the floor. No one spoke at first. Then slowly, eyes turned to the officers and to Ayanda, who now stood in the center, no longer the outsider. The silence broke with voices, shocked, angry, denying everything. "This is madness," one aunt shouted. "How can this girl own anything?" an uncle asked. Chief Chibwezi stepped forward, voice shaking. "She's lying. That will is fake." But Inspector Tundi didn't flinch. He opened a brown envelope and spread out the documents on the table. "This is the original will. It's signed. It's registered. It names Ayanda as the sole heir to the Ikorodu land and the original Obi house." The room went quiet. Chibweze turned to the family's lawyer cousin, Uncle Ibuka, who had always handled their property matters. But Ibuka's face was pale. He didn't say a word. He looked down at his shoes, then slowly shook his head. Ayanda stepped forward. Her voice was calm but clear. "You didn't want me here. You called me names. You made me sleep in a garage. But I didn't come here to fight. I only came because my mother asked me to reconnect. And now, the truth is here." She placed photos on the table, pictures of the garage, of her dumped bag, of her soaked clothes. Zara stood beside her, her voice trembling. "It's true. They treated her badly, and I saw the will before it went missing. She's telling the truth." There was nothing more to say. Inspector Tunde looked around the room. From this point, Ayanda has full legal rights to her father's properties. Anyone who interferes again will face criminal charges. The investigation is ongoing. Ayanda looked at their faces. No more pretending, no more fake smiles, just silence and defeat. For the first time, they were forced to see her, not as a burden, not as a shame, but as the rightful heir. A week passed, and Ayanda returned to the same gate, where she once stood in the rain, ignored and humiliated. But this time, things were different. She wasn't holding a small bag or standing alone. A black government vehicle pulled up behind her, and out stepped a city official and a land surveyor, clipboard in hand. The moment the family saw the official team, windows opened across the mansion. Curious faces peeked through curtains. Whispers ran through the house like wildfire, but no one came out to greet her this time. They just watched. Ayanda looked at the compound, her face calm. The surveyor confirmed it. The Ikorodu land had just been approved for a major government-backed development. Its value had multiplied. What her father left wasn't just land, it was legacy. Workers moved in swiftly. The old gate was taken down and replaced with a stronger modern one. A new signboard was installed bearing the family name, but now it meant something else. She didn't throw anyone out of the house, not even Chibwezi. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The documents, the truth and the law spoke louder than anything else. Ayanda moved into the master bedroom her father once used. It was dusty, untouched for years, but it was hers now. Mama Nakem, loyal and wise, returned, not as a maid this time, but as the house manager. She organized repairs, cleaned out the old things, and restored the place to life again. Zara came by every day after school. She brought snacks, stories, and laughter. They became more like sisters than cousins. The same relatives who had turned their backs on Ayanda now walked quietly past her in the hallways, avoiding her eyes. They had nothing left to say. Some were ashamed, some bitter, but Ayanda didn't care. She no longer needed their approval. She had her father's name, her mother's love, and her own strength. That was enough. She sat by the balcony one evening, watching the sunset over the land that once belonged to her father and now belonged to her. She thought about her mother's last words. Reconnect, you're not alone. And it was true. She wasn't. Not anymore.